They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I say it's best served with precision, patience, and a lifetime of tradecraft they thought I'd forgotten. My name is Viktor Konstantin Volkov, though for the past 30 years, I've been Victor Kane, a widowed grandfather living in a modest ranch house in Prescott, Arizona. I spend my days tending roses, playing chess at the community center, and spoiling my 2 grandchildren when they visit. The neighbors know me as the friendly old man who brings cookies to block parties and helps jumpstart dead car batteries. They don't know that I was once the Ghost, one of the Soviet Union's most decorated intelligence officers. They don't know about the operations I ran, the networks I built, the secrets I kept. After the Cold War ended, I made a deal with the Americans. Immunity, a new identity, a quiet life, in exchange for everything I knew about Soviet operations in the Western Hemisphere. I kept my end of the bargain. For 3 decades, I've been invisible, irrelevant, forgotten. I liked it that way. I'd earned my peace. Until 6 weeks ago, when 3 FBI agents showed up at my door with a warrant for my arrest. It was a Tuesday morning, unseasonably warm for October. I was in my garage, organizing tools, when I heard the vehicles pull up. 3 black SUVs, the kind federal agents favor. My instincts, dormant but never dead, sparked to life. I walked to my front door and opened it before they could knock. 6 agents, all wearing tactical vests, hands resting casually near their weapons. The lead agent was a woman in her 40s, blonde hair pulled back tight, eyes like chips of ice. "Victor Kane?" she asked, though she clearly knew the answer. "That's me. What can I do for you folks?" She held up a badge. "Special Agent Sarah Mitchell, FBI. We have a warrant for your arrest in connection with the murder of James Holloway." I felt my blood go cold, but I kept my face neutral. Years of training. James Holloway had been my CIA handler, the man who'd facilitated my defection and resettlement. I'd last seen him 5 years ago at a coffee shop in Phoenix. He looked older, tired, but content in retirement. "Jim's dead?" I asked quietly. "Don't play innocent," Mitchell said. "We know you met with him 3 weeks ago at his home in Sedona. Neighbors saw your truck. We found your DNA at the scene. I haven't seen Jim in 5 years," I said, "and I haven't been to Sedona in months. Save it for your lawyer." She nodded to her agents. 2 of them moved forward, pulling out handcuffs. I didn't resist. Resistance would have been pointless and out of character for a scared old man. But as they cuffed me and led me to their vehicle, my mind was racing through possibilities, probabilities, angles. Someone had killed Jim Holloway. Someone had planted evidence pointing to me. Someone wanted me either dead or buried so deep in the federal prison system I'd never see daylight again. The question was, who? And more importantly, why now, after all these years? At the FBI field office in Phoenix, they put me in an interrogation room and left me alone for 2 hours. Another classic technique, designed to let anxiety build. I used the time to think. The evidence they claimed to have was damning. My truck at the scene. My DNA. But I knew it was fabricated. I'd been playing cards at the community center the night Holloway was killed. I had witnesses. Unless they picked a night when I had no alibi. That would require planning, surveillance, patience. This wasn't some random frame job. This was professional. When Mitchell finally entered the room, she had a thick folder. She sat across from me and spread out crime scene photos. Jim Holloway's body, sprawled on his living room floor, a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. Execution style. "Professional hit," Mitchell said, watching my reaction. "Just like the old days, right, Victor? Or should I call you?" So they knew. Or someone had told them. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. She smiled, cold and sharp. We know everything about you. Your real name, your history with the KGB, the operations you ran. We know you were one of their best wetwork specialists before you turned. That was a lifetime ago. I cooperated fully with the agency. I've been clean for 30 years. Have you? She pulled out another photo. A surveillance shot of me at my mailbox. You've been very careful, Mr. Volkov, but not careful enough. We know you've been in contact with former associates. We know you've been receiving coded messages. This was news to me. Troubling news. Someone is lying to you, I said carefully. Is that right? Then explain how we found your fingerprints on the murder weapon. A Makarov pistol, vintage KGB issue. Your fingerprints, your gun, your victim. This is about as open and shut as it gets. A Makarov. I hadn't touched one in decades. I'd surrendered all my weapons when I defected. I want my lawyer, I said. Mitchell's smile widened. Of course you do. But here's the thing, Victor. You don't have many friends left in the intelligence community. The people who arranged your immunity deal? Most of them are dead or retired. James Holloway was your last advocate. And now he's gone too. Convenient, isn't it? She stood up, gathered her files, and left me alone again. I understood then. This wasn't just about framing me for murder. This was about erasing me, removing the last witness to secrets someone wanted buried. Jim Holloway had known things, and so did I. Someone was cleaning house. They transferred me to county jail that evening. Processing took hours. They put me in an orange jumpsuit, took my photograph, recorded my fingerprints. I shuffled through the motions like any other frightened old man. But I wasn't frightened. I was angry. And I was already planning. My court-appointed lawyer was a tired-looking man named David Chin, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He met with me the next morning in a gray conference room that smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. Mr. Kane, I'm going to be honest with you, he said, flipping through his notes. This looks bad. Really bad. The evidence against you is substantial. Your best bet is probably to negotiate a plea deal. I didn't kill anyone, I said. That may be true, but proving it is going to be difficult. The prosecution has physical evidence, witness statements, and your connection to the victim. Unless you have an ironclad alibi. I was playing cards at the community center the night Holloway was killed. Chin looked up. You're sure about that? Positive. Tuesday night poker game. I'm there every week. There were 6 other people at the table. For the first time, Chen looked hopeful. Okay, that's good. That's something I can work with. I'll track down those witnesses, get their statements. You won't find them, I said quietly. What do you mean? I mean whoever set this up will have already gotten to them. Bribed them, threatened them, or worse. By the time you find them, they'll either have conveniently forgotten I was there, or they won't be able to testify at all. Chin stared at me. You sound paranoid, Mr. Kane. I sound experienced, Mr. Chun. Someone has gone to great lengths to frame me. They won't leave loose ends. Then what do you suggest we do? I leaned forward. Give me bail. Whatever it takes. I need to be outside these walls. Bail for a murder charge? That's going to be nearly impossible, especially with your background. Try anyway. And in the meantime, I need you to do something for me. I gave him an address in Phoenix, a storage unit I'd maintained under a different name for years. Insurance, I'd told myself. Just in case. Inside were documents, backup identification, and other resources I'd hoped never to use again. Chen looked dubious but agreed to check it out. He left, promising to file for a bail hearing. I was returned to my cell, a 6x8 concrete box I shared with a young man named Marcus, who was in for drug possession. He was scared, jumpy, and wouldn't stop talking. I mostly ignored him, focusing instead on the problem at hand. That night, lying on my thin mattress, I ran through everything I knew. The frame was professional, well-resourced, and carefully planned. That suggested either a government agency or someone with government connections. The fact that they were using the FBI to do their dirty work suggested the latter. Someone inside the bureau, or someone with enough influence to manipulate an investigation. Agent Sarah Mitchell was the key. She was running point on the case, and she'd known things about my past that weren't in my official file. Someone had briefed her, given her information, pointed her in my direction. I needed to know who. The bail hearing was scheduled for Friday, 3 days away. That gave me time to think, to plan. My lawyer visited again on Thursday with bad news. The storage unit had been cleaned out, emptied weeks ago. Someone had anticipated my moves.
"They're thorough,"
I admitted. "But not thorough enough."
"What do you mean?"
"I have other resources, Mr. Chen. Other contingencies. But I need to be out of here to access them." The bail hearing was a formality. The prosecution argued I was a flight risk with international connections and a history of espionage. My lawyer argued I was a 72-year-old man with deep community ties who'd lived peacefully for 3 decades. The judge sided with the prosecution. Bail denied. As they led me out of the courtroom, I caught Agent Mitchell's eye. She was sitting in the gallery, arms folded, expression smug. She thought she'd won. She had no idea who she was dealing with. That night, I had a visitor. Not my lawyer, someone else. The guard brought me to a private meeting room, and there sat a man I hadn't seen in 20 years.
"Hello, Victor,"
he said in Russian. His name was Alexei Dmitriev, and he'd been my protege in the old days, a young intelligence officer I'd trained before the fall. Last I'd heard, he'd stayed loyal to Russia, risen through the ranks of the FSB.
"Alexei,"
I said, switching to Russian as well.
"what brings you to America?"
"Concern for an old friend." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I heard about your legal troubles. I wanted to see if the rumors were true." "What rumors?" "That the ghost had finally been caught. That the Americans had turned on their prize defector." He leaned back in his chair. "I always wondered if you'd regret your choice." "I don't regret anything. And I haven't been caught. I've been framed." "Is there a difference?"
Alexei shrugged.
"Either way, you're in prison. Either way, you're finished." "Why are you really here, Alexei?" His expression hardened. "To offer you a choice. Come back. Mother Russia doesn't forget her sons, even the prodigal ones. We can make this all go away. New identity, new life, back home. All you have to do is ask. And what would Russia want in return? The same thing you gave the Americans. Everything you know. But this time, you'd be working for the right side."
I almost laughed.
"The right side. Is that what you call it?" "I call it survival, Victor. The Americans used you, and now they're throwing you away. We're offering you a way out. I'll take my chances with the American justice system."
Alexei stood.
"Suit yourself. But when you're rotting in a federal prison for the rest of your life, remember that you had a choice."
He left, and I was taken back to my cell. But Alexei's visit had confirmed something important. This frame job had international dimensions.
Russia knew about it, which meant either they were involved or they were monitoring the situation closely. Either way, I was caught in the middle of something bigger than a simple murder case. The next morning, I made my move. Prison breaks aren't like they show in the movies. They require patience, observation, and an understanding of human nature. In my 2 weeks of incarceration, I'd learned the routines, identified the weaknesses, and cultivated the right relationships. My cellmate Marcus was the key. He was young, desperate, and terrified of the 5-year sentence he was facing. I'd spent hours listening to him talk about his daughter, about the mistakes he'd made, about his determination to turn his life around. On Sunday morning, I had a heart attack. At least, that's what it looked like. I'd been hoarding my blood pressure medication, taking only half doses, storing the rest. That morning, I took all of them at once, along with some extra pills I'd traded for with another inmate. Within 20 minutes, my heart rate was erratic, my blood pressure dangerously low. Marcus started screaming for the guards. They rushed me to the medical unit, a small clinic attached to the jail. 2 guards accompanied me, along with a nurse. Standard protocol for a medical emergency. They laid me on a gurney, hooked me up to monitors, started in 4. The nurse was focused on stabilizing me. The guards were bored, standing by the door, talking about football. Nobody was watching closely enough. I waited until the nurse turned to grab more supplies. Then I ripped out my 4, rolled off the gurney, and drove my elbow into the nearest guard's solar plexus. He went down gasping. The second guard reached for his weapon, but I was faster. I'd been old and slow for a long time, but muscle memory is a powerful thing. I disarmed him, used his own baton against him, and had him unconscious in seconds. The nurse screamed. I grabbed her, not roughly, and pressed a pressure point in her neck. She slumped unconscious in my arms. 30 seconds. That's how long the whole thing took. I stripped the guard of his uniform, put it on over my jumpsuit, took his keys and radio. Then I walked out of the medical unit like I belonged there. The jail was in chaos. Alarms were blaring, guards were running toward the medical unit. I walked in the opposite direction toward the staff exit. Calm, purposeful, just another guard responding to the emergency. I made it to the parking lot, found the guard's personal vehicle, a Ford pickup, and used his keys to start it. Then I drove out of the parking lot at a reasonable speed, waving to the guard at the gate. He waved back. 10 minutes later, I was on the interstate, heading north. I knew I had maybe 2 hours before they fully mobilized. 2 hours to disappear, to access resources, to become someone else. After that, every law enforcement agency in the state would be looking for me. I drove to a rest stop 30 miles outside Phoenix and parked in a corner of the lot. In the truck's glove compartment, I found the guard's personal phone. I used it to make a single call to a number I'd memorized decades ago. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. Yes. A woman's voice, professional, careful. This is Cobalt 7, I said, using my old CIA code designation. I need to speak with Shepard. Silence. Then, Cobalt 7 is inactive. Inactive but not dead. I need Shepard. It's urgent. Another pause. Hold. I waited, watching the parking lot, counting the seconds. After 3 minutes, a different voice came on the line. Male, older, gravelly from years of cigarettes. Victor? That really you? Hello, Tom. Tom Shepard had been the deputy director of operations at the CIA during my defection. He'd retired years ago, but he still had connections, still had influence. Jesus, Victor, I heard about Holloway. I heard they arrested you. They framed me, Tom. And I just broke out of county jail. He whistled low. You've got stones, I'll give you that. But you just made yourself the FBI's most wanted. I know. That's why I need your help. Victor, I'm retired. I can't. Someone killed Jim Holloway and pinned it on me. Someone with access to classified information about my past. Someone inside the bureau or connected to it. This is bigger than me, Tom. Holloway knew things, secrets from the old days. If someone's cleaning house,
You could be next. Silence. When Tom spoke again, his voice was harder. What do you need? Information. I need to know who's running the investigation. Who briefed Agent Mitchell about my background? Who has access to my sealed files? That's not going to be easy. I didn't call you because it was easy. I called because you're one of the few people I trust. Tom sighed. All right. Give me 24 hours. I'll see what I can dig up. Where can I reach you? I gave him a burner email address, one I'd set up years ago as part of my contingency planning. Check it tomorrow at noon. And Tom? Be careful. Whoever's behind this is playing for keeps. Aren't they always? He hung up. I destroyed the guard's phone, wiped down the truck, and started walking. 2 miles down the highway was a truck stop with a budget motel attached. I checked in using fake ID and cash I'd hidden in the heel of my shoe. Always keep an emergency kit on your person, a lesson I'd learned long ago. In the motel room, I showered, ditched the guard uniform, and put on civilian clothes I bought from the truck stop gift shop. Then I sat on the bed and took stock. I was a fugitive now, wanted for murder and escape. Every cop in Arizona was looking for me. I had no allies, no resources, no safe haven. But I had something they'd underestimated: experience, determination, and a very particular set of skills. The ghost was awake, and he was hunting. By midnight, I'd walked 3 miles to a shopping plaza and broken into a closed electronics store. I needed a computer, untraceable, to access information. The store's security was laughable. A basic alarm system I disabled in under a minute. I set up in the back office, using the store's computer to access the dark web through a series of proxies and VPN layers. The internet had changed since my active days, but the principles remained the same: anonymity, misdirection, compartmentalization. I started researching Agent Sarah Mitchell. Her official FBI profile was sparse. 15 years with the Bureau, most of it in white-collar crime, before a recent transfer to violent crimes. Solid arrest record, multiple commendations. On paper, she was exactly what she appeared to be: a competent federal agent. But I'd learned long ago that what matters isn't what's on paper, it's what's hidden beneath it. I dug deeper, cross-referencing her name with other databases, looking for connections. Her financial records were clean, but I found something interesting. 6 months ago, she'd taken a 3-week vacation to Prague. Unusual destination for an FBI agent from Phoenix. Prague, a city I knew well. A city where intelligence services from a dozen countries operated, where deals were made in shadowed cafes, where loyalties shifted like desert sand. I accessed old contact networks, forums where former intelligence operatives traded information. I posted carefully worded inquiries, using recognition codes from the Cold War era. Within an hour, I had responses. Someone remembered seeing an American woman matching Mitchell's description meeting with a Russian operative in Prague's old town. The operative's name set off alarm bells: Yuri Volkov. My cousin. I sat back from the computer, my mind racing. Yuri and I had been close once, before my defection. He'd been FSB, rising through the ranks even as I became. When I turned, he'd taken it as a personal betrayal. Last I'd heard, he'd sworn to kill me himself if he ever got the chance. Now he was meeting with the FBI agent investigating me for murder. The connections were forming a picture. Yuri had somehow recruited or blackmailed Mitchell. He'd fed her false information about me, planted evidence, orchestrated the frame. This wasn't just about revenge on me, it was about something bigger. Jim Holloway's murder was real, but I wasn't the killer. Who was? And why frame me for it? I kept digging. Holloway had been retired for 8 years, living quietly in Sedona. But 3 months ago,
he'd made a trip to Washington, D.C. He'd met with someone at CIA headquarters. The meeting wasn't on any official calendar. I found it only by hacking into parking garage security footage and tracking his rental car. Who had he met with? And what had they discussed? At 3 a.m., I finally found something useful. Holloway had written an email draft the day before he died, never sent. I recovered it from his email server's trash folder. Tom, we need to talk. Aspen is active again. I thought we buried this in '94, but someone's digging it up. The Russian I told you about made contact, asking questions. I don't know how much they know, but if this gets out, it'll destroy a lot of people. Call me ASAP. Aspen. I knew that code name. It had been a joint CIA MI6 operation in the early 90s, during the chaotic years after the Soviet collapse. The operation had involved recruiting high-ranking Russian intelligence officers, turning them into Western assets. It had been one of the most successful intelligence coups of the post-Cold War era. And I'd been part of it. I'd helped identify candidates, facilitated meetings, provided intelligence that led to several key recruitments. The operation had been buried deep, all records sealed, to protect the assets who were still active. If someone was digging into Aspen, they were looking for those assets. And anyone connected to the operation would be a liability. That's why Holloway was dead. That's why I was being framed. Someone was cleaning up loose ends, eliminating everyone who knew about Aspen. And Yuri, motivated by revenge against me and probably working for elements within Russian intelligence, was helping them. But who was pulling the strings? I heard sirens outside. Time to move. I wiped down the computer, disabled the security cameras, and slipped out the back door. Police cars were converging on the shopping plaza, lights flashing. Someone must have triggered a silent alarm. I disappeared into the darkness, moving through yards and alleys, putting distance between myself and the search perimeter. By dawn, I was 5 miles away, hiding in a drainage culvert, waiting for Tom Shepard's message. At noon, I accessed the burner email from a public library computer. Tom had delivered. Victor, you've kicked over a hornet's nest. Mitchell's investigation was greenlit by the deputy director, but the real push came from someone higher. I found encrypted communications between Mitchell and an unknown contact routed through servers in Eastern Europe. Someone's running her, and it's not anyone in the official chain of command. Holloway's death is connected to Aspen. There are rumors someone's been systematically eliminating people connected to the operation. 3 former case officers have died in the past year, all ruled accidents or natural causes. You're not paranoid, you're next on the list. Watch your back. I'm digging deeper, but need to be careful. They're watching me too. 3 dead case officers. A systematic purge. I composed a response. Tom, need names of surviving Aspen participants. Also need to know who in FBI command structure has access to my sealed file. Time is critical. I sent the email, cleared my browsing history, and left the library. As I walked out, I noticed an unmarked sedan parked across the street. 2 men inside, watching the entrance. Not FBI. I'd spent enough years studying body language and operational tradecraft to recognize intelligence operatives. These men were too alert, too focused. They had the look of Russian FSB. Yuri had set a team. I continued walking, normal pace, just another elderly man out for a stroll. The sedan started following me, keeping a careful distance. They weren't moving to arrest me. They were tracking me, probably trying to determine where I'd go, who I'd contact. I led them on a tour of downtown Phoenix, through shopping districts and residential neighborhoods, watching their technique in reflections and windows. They were good, professional, but they didn't know who they were following. They didn't know my tricks. I entered a busy shopping mall through the main entrance, took the escalator to the second floor, and disappeared into a department store. I found the employee areas, slipped through the back corridors, security was minimal, and exited through a loading dock on the opposite side of the building. The sedan was still parked at the main entrance, waiting for me to emerge. I hijacked a delivery truck by waiting for the driver to go inside for a signature, then simply driving away. It was risky, but I needed transportation and couldn't afford to be tracked. By evening, I'd driven to Tucson and ditched the truck in a discount store parking lot. I found a rundown motel, paid cash for a room, and finally allowed myself to rest. But only for a few hours. Because I'd made a decision. I was done running. Done being hunted. It was time to turn the tables. The next morning, I accessed Tom's response from an internet cafe. He'd come through with information that confirmed my suspicions and added new dimensions to the conspiracy. Victor, Aspen had 12 core participants, case officers, handlers, analysts. 7 are dead, 3 in the past year, 4 earlier from legitimate causes. 5 remain alive, me, you, Deputy Director Frank Kellerman at CIA, retired MI6 officer Margaret Thornton in London, and a former analyst named Robert Chen, now living in Vancouver. Someone's working through a kill list. Kellerman authorized Mitchell's investigation into you, but I think he's being manipulated. He's scheduled to testify before a closed congressional committee next week about historical CIA operations. If he talks about Aspen, it could expose assets still active in Russia. About your sealed file, only Kellerman and FBI Director Walsh have unrestricted access. But there's evidence someone hacked the system 6 months ago. Traces lead back to Russian IP addresses, but could be misdirection. Be careful. They're closing in. T. Deputy Director Frank Kellerman. I'd met him a few times during my debriefing sessions. Ambitious, political, the type who'd sacrifice anything for career advancement. If someone had gotten to him, convinced him that eliminating Aspen participants was necessary for national security or political convenience, he'd do it. But murder federal witnesses? That seemed extreme even for a career bureaucrat. Unless he wasn't calling the shots. Unless he was being manipulated, threatened, or blackmailed. I needed to get to Kellerman, find out what he knew. But he was in Washington, protected by layers of security. Getting to him would require resources I didn't have. Or did I? I sent Tom another message. Need face-to-face meeting. Your choice of location. Come alone. V. His response came within an hour. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Scottsdale. Japanese garden behind the art museum. I'll be alone. T. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I stole a car from a mall parking lot, a nondescript Toyota that wouldn't attract attention, and drove to Scottsdale. I scouted the meeting location, identified escape routes, potential threats. The Japanese garden was public, open, which made it both safe and dangerous. Safe because witnesses would deter violence. Dangerous because surveillance would be easy. At 2:45 p.m., I entered the garden through a side entrance, moving slowly like any tourist admiring the carefully raked gravel and minimalist landscaping. I spotted Tom sitting on a bench near a koi pond, feeding the fish, looking like a retired government official enjoying his golden years. I approached carefully, watching for surveillance. Tom was clean, no obvious tail, no electronic monitoring that I could detect. "Victor," he said, as I sat down beside him, "you look terrible. Prison food and 2 weeks on the run will do that." I scattered some fish food into the pond. "Thanks for coming. Thanks for not being dead. When I heard about the escape, I figured they'd gun you down within 24 hours. They tried. I'm harder to kill than they remember." Tom smiled grimly.
The ghost lives. So what's your play here, Victor? You can't run forever. I'm not running anymore. I'm going on offense. I need to get to Kellerman, find out what he knows about Aspen. That's impossible. He's in D.C., surrounded by security. Nothing's impossible. But I'll need help. Your help.
Tom was quiet for a long moment, watching the koi swim lazy circles.
If I help you, I'm committing career suicide. Possibly actual suicide, given how this is playing out. I know.
And I wouldn't ask if there was another option. What do you need? Access to Kellerman. A face-to-face meeting, just 10 minutes.
Can you arrange it?
Maybe. He trusts me, or at least he did. I could tell him I have information about the Aspen situation. Ask for a private meeting.
Tom turned to look at me.
But you realize that if Kellerman is compromised, if he's actually behind this, I'd be walking both of us into a trap. I'm willing to take that risk. I'm not sure I am. Tom, they killed Jim Holloway. They're killing everyone connected to Aspen. You said it yourself. 3 case officers dead in the past year. How long before they come for you?
He stood up, paced a few steps, hands in his pockets.
All right. I'll set up the meeting. But we do this smart. Public location, multiple witnesses, recorded conversation. I'm not going to some isolated safe house to get shot in the back of the head. Agreed? When can you arrange it? Give me 48 hours. I'll contact you through the usual channel.
We parted ways, Tom heading to the parking lot, me taking a different exit. As I walked through the garden, I spotted them. 2 men, Russian features, too interested in me. Yuri's team had found me again. I didn't run. Instead, I walked directly toward them, forcing them to make a choice. They separated, trying to box me in. Classic pincer movement. I waited until they were committed, then moved. Not away from them, toward the nearest one.
I got inside his reach before he could react, grabbed his wrist, and used his own momentum to throw him into a decorative stone lantern. He hit hard and went down. The second man was reaching for a weapon when I kicked his knee. He stumbled, and I followed up with strikes to his throat and temple. Professional, efficient, nothing wasted. Both men were unconscious in under 10 seconds. People were screaming, running. I walked quickly toward the exit, not running. Running attracts attention, just moving purposefully like someone late for an appointment. I made it to the Toyota and drove away before police arrived. But I knew the situation had escalated. Yuri was done playing cat and mouse. Next time, his men would shoot first. I needed to move faster. That night, I reached out to someone I'd hoped never to contact again, Alexei Dmitriev, the FSB officer who'd visited me in jail. I sent him a message through an encrypted channel I knew the FSB monitored.
Need to talk about Yuri. He's making mistakes. Let's make a deal.
The response came within an hour.
Tomorrow night. Details to follow.
The meeting was set for a warehouse in an industrial area south of Phoenix. Neutral ground, relatively secure, easy to monitor for ambush. I arrived 2 hours early, scouted the location, found 3 surveillance positions where I could watch the approach routes. At 10 p.m., Alexei arrived alone, driving a rental car. I watched him for 30 minutes, making sure he wasn't followed, wasn't setting a trap. Finally, I approached from behind, making just enough noise that he wouldn't be startled.
Hello, Alexei.
He turned, smiled.
Victor. Still alive. Still free. Impressive. You didn't think I'd last this long? I thought the Americans would have killed you by now. Or Yuri.
He gestured to the warehouse.
Shall we talk inside? We entered through a side door. The warehouse was empty except for some old machinery and dusty crates. Alexei pulled out a small device, swept for electronic surveillance, then nodded.
We're clean. So you want to talk about Yuri? Your cousin has become quite the zealot, you know? Obsessed with revenge. He's working with someone inside the FBI, framing me for murder. Why would Moscow authorize that?
Alexei laughed.
Moscow didn't authorize anything. Yuri's gone rogue.
Oh, he thinks he's doing Mother Russia a service, but really he's just settling old scores.
The operation against you and your Aspen friends? That's all him, with some help from sympathetic elements who share his hatred of defectors. Who's helping him? That's where it gets interesting.
Alexei pulled out a tablet, showed me a photo. A man in his 50s, European features, cold eyes.
You recognize him?
I did.
Dmitry Sokolov. Former KGB, then FSB. I knew him in the old days. He's Yuri's handler now. Officially retired, but really he runs a private security company that does wet work for oligarchs and politicians. He's been facilitating Yuri's vendetta, providing resources, intelligence. Why would he care about Aspen? Because Aspen compromised several Russian intelligence officers, turned them into Western assets. Sokolov wants those assets identified and eliminated. Yuri wants revenge on you. Their interests aligned. And Moscow just lets this happen.
Alexei shrugged.
Moscow has bigger problems.